So with us today, Volkswagen's all-new 3-cylinder 1-litre TSI. Now it replaces the larger 1.2 and it has 5 horsepower more. This one has 110 horsepower, the same 175 Nm of torque, but slightly later in the power band. Question is, how good is it to drive? And for the first time, this comes with a 6-speed manual. So a lot to look forward to. Let's get going. First up, what else is new on the 2020 Polo? Well, very little actually. VW's baby was facelifted recently and gets a Polo GTI-like nose. It looks appropriately sporty, and what is also a bit different is that it gets an extra bit of cladding that runs along the bottom of the doors and around the rear, ending in what looks like a faux diffuser. Even though it's more than a generation old now, it still looks perfectly proportioned, and often we tend to forget how timeless it is. The cabin is placed inset of the wide hips, giving it a wide base. The crisp details still elicit long appreciative stares, and what adds drama are those big wheels. But what's it like to drive? Let's get straight behind the wheel. Now right from the outset, you can tell this is a 3-cylinder. It's a bit of a flutter, a bit of a vibration. You can feel it in the clutch pedal. And when you take off, that rotary sound, that thrum, that's definitely there. But having said that, it isn't coarse, it isn't rough, it's not in your face, and after a bit, you almost tend to forget that it's a 3 and not a 4. The 1-litre TSI responds nicely to a tap on the throttle. Now the 1-litre engine pulls pretty cleanly from as low as 1000 RPM. But power only comes in past 2000, and then you have to wait till around 2.5 for it to really come in. Cross this engine speed and you really start to move. Once past 2500, there's a nice slug of power, and then it pulls hard till around 6000 RPM. Performance is so strong, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour comes up in just 9.97 seconds, making it one of the fastest hatchbacks around. The Swift, for reference, is a full 2 seconds slower, and that's despite it weighing a good 190 kilos less. The 6-speed manual also adds considerably to the driving experience. Now the gearbox is easy to shift and direct, but it isn't the lightest unit around, and you do have to put a bit of effort into shifting. What the 6-speed allows you to do is extract the maximum power from the engine, and that makes driving this Polo even more enjoyable. It rides pretty well too. On its large 16-inch tires, there is a bit of firmness, there is a bit of stiffness in the springs, but it also does round off the bumps quite nicely. So large craters don't pose that much of a problem, and the ground clearance is generous. What makes it so enjoyable to drive is that you can carry a lot of speed into corners. The stiffness in the springs, the light but direct steering, and the overall agility of the Polo make it fun to drive as well. Turn-in is sharp, body control is good, and the harder you drive it, the better it feels. This clearly is a great driver's car. Even the brakes impress. They have good bite and give the driver plenty of confidence. Like all Volkswagens, the interiors are tough and well put together. So the familiar Polo interior with very high quality stuff, the fit and finish is just beautiful. Nice buttons here, everything functions beautifully, but it's a bit too grey, especially this gunmetal finish here. It looks nice in isolation, but with all this black, it does look a bit dour and dull. But the driving position is excellent. Nice big dial, so you know exactly the speed and the speed of the engine from the tachometer. And visibility from the driver's seat is pretty good too, especially for such a low slung hatch. Also nice is a 6.5-inch touchscreen. It isn't very large, but functionality is good. What's nice is that Apple CarPlay and Android Auto add value too. There isn't too much space in the back of the Polo, that's my driving position, and knee room is very limited. But seat comfort isn't too bad and there is a decent amount of headroom. You also get a vent, you get a 12-volt point here so you can put a couple of charging points in it, and you do miss the elbow rest, but otherwise a bit cramped but not too uncomfortable. When it comes to kit, Volkswagen has deleted some essential stuff. There's no rear parking camera, no ESP or stability control, no LED lights and no wireless charging either. The 2020 Polo Highline, however, does get stuff like a cooled glove box, cruise control, voice command and one-touch power window switches. Outright performance is what sets this car apart, and at the moment there is no quicker mainstream hatch. It's stable at speed, loves to tackle corners and in general goads you into driving it quickly. Put simply, this is a brilliant driver's car with the ability to plant a big smile on your face. If all you want is space, comfort and practicality, the new 2020 Polo 1-litre TSI is not the hatchback for you. Shift your gaze to the driver's seat, where most owners in this class sit, however, and the Polo 1-litre TSI suddenly emerges as a frontrunner. Adding to the feel-good factor is Volkswagen's legendary build quality. It feels solid both inside and out, and you know that even after 5 years of hard use, it won't look worse for wear. At Rs 8.02 lakh, it also isn't too far off from the Swift ZXi Plus, which at Rs 7.58 lakh currently dominates this class. So if you're looking for a hatchback that's both fun to drive and very usable on a daily basis, this car is for you.
We're in Spain at the moment. We've been riding two brand new motorcycles from BMW for 2020. We spent a couple of hours on some fantastic roads on the F900R and the F900 XR. Now, these are two new middleweight motorcycles that will be coming to India later this year. So let's tell you a little bit more about what these motorcycles have to offer. Before we go any further, we should begin by saying that this was shot before the world fell flat on its face, and both bikes have just been launched in India. With that out of the way, let's talk about the motorcycles, starting with the naked F900R. The biggest thing this bike has going for itself is its angry and muscular design. The F900R looks like it's waiting to punch you in the face, and it looks far more aggressive than the F800R that it replaces. In fact, with its fat fuel tank and large side panels, the 900 looks more like a liter naked than the Triumph Street Triple or KTM 790 Duke rival that it actually is, and this will appeal to many big bike enthusiasts in India. Strangely, the rear section is quite bland in comparison with the rest of the bike, aside from that interesting looking exhaust. In terms of seating comfort, well, the R is more sporty than I expected, with a lean down to a flat handlebar and foot pegs that are fairly aggressively set as well. In comparison, the F900 XR has none of the aggression and is a more flowing and handsome design to my eyes, although that tail section is just as drab as the 900R. The F900 XR has a two-way adjustable windscreen and a 15.5 litre fuel tank, which holds 2.5 litres more than the naked bike. As for the seating position, the XR features a wonderfully comfortable riding position with decent wind protection and just a hint of sportiness thrown in. So the interesting thing is that the F900R and the XR are almost identical underneath, and apart from the visual changes you see here, better wind protection and a slightly different seating position, there isn't that much differentiating these two bikes, but they feel very different to ride. What remains common on both is the electronics package with 4 riding modes available in the top spec models. Both bikes also get a non-adjustable 43mm USD fork, which is rather underwhelming, but the new 900s are the first bikes in their segment to get an electronically adjustable rear shock. So how do they feel to ride? Let's start with the F900R. With a curb weight of 211 kg, this is a well-fed motorcycle that weighs over 20 kilos more than its European rivals, and this is something you clearly feel on the road. It's quite an old school riding experience in that the R is quite capable, but it's not exactly light and nimble on its feet, and you have to put some muscle into throwing it around. Once you get the hang of how it wants to be ridden, the F900R is quite a bit of fun, but I ultimately found myself much more impressed with the F900 XR. This bike features about 170 mm of suspension travel on both ends, which is much higher than the R. In fact, those numbers are right up there with the F750 GS adventure bike. However, unlike the GS, the F900 XR runs 17-inch rims at both ends, and it has the same steering rake angle as the F900R. With its extra suspension travel comes an increase in seat height, and where the naked bike has a reasonable 815 mm seat height, the XR seat is a bit higher at 825 mm. However, both bikes offer accessory seat options, and you even get suspension lowering kits, so this shouldn't be a major concern. Despite all that travel, the XR suspension is very well controlled, and you only feel significant dive under very hard braking, something both bikes do quite well. Nevertheless, even with its reduced cornering clearance, the XR could easily keep up with its naked sibling through some fast mountain roads. But once the fun was over and we had a long and cold highway ride back to the hotel, the XR proved to be a much more comfortable and enjoyable companion with a much plusher ride quality. This sort of multifaceted capability will work wonders in the Indian riding environment. And what should also work well on our roads is the new parallel twin engine. If you notice, the name is F900 and not F850 like the GS, and that's because this engine has been bored out. It makes a little more power, a little more torque, and it's identical on both motorcycles. This new engine displaces 895cc compared with the 853cc motor seen on the F850 and F750 models. The new motor now makes 105 horsepower, which is up from the 95 HP in the 850 and the 77 HP from the detuned engine in the F750. On Spain's winding roads, the 900's meaty mid-range was something to really appreciate, and the engine feels a little more smooth and flexible than the 850 engine, which was no slouch itself. Outright performance is quite good at normal speeds, but a mild vibration does creep in as you approach the top of the rev ceiling. As for the quick shifter, it's a typical BMW affair and it works well at high RPMs, but is clunky if you plan to use it at slow city speeds. What BMW is trying to offer here is a very premium experience, and both these bikes have some interesting features, many features that are first in the segment, although many of them are optional extras. Both F900s can be optioned with some great features if you're willing to tick a lot of boxes. We're talking about features like a tire pressure monitoring system, cruise control, a bi-directional quick shifter, and the electronically adjustable rear shock that we mentioned earlier. You can also option the Riding Modes Pro, which not only gives you 2 extra riding modes, but it also brings in more advanced safety features like cornering ABS, motor slip regulation, and BMW's dynamic traction control system. Internationally, the 900s can even be optioned with keyless ignition and cornering headlamps, but that's not available to Indian buyers. However, if you just stick with the standard models, you'll get LED lighting, 2 riding modes and a TFT display, in addition to the usual basic traction control and ABS safety features. Keeping the F900s relevant for the younger generation is BMW's connected app that lets you analyze a huge amount of ride data, including maximum lean angles, maximum speed achieved at any point on the route, and even when you trigger the ABS. This is the most comprehensive app I've ever used from a manufacturer, and thankfully, this one comes for free. Now, the R is an interesting product, but it's quite traditional. The XR, on the other hand, I think this bike has a lot of potential for our market, and I can't wait to see what it's like on our roads. With a badge like that, it's no surprise that the F900s are not cheap motorcycles, but there's also the fact that both come in as CBUs all the way from Berlin. The F900R has just been launched at Rs 9.9 lakhs ex-showroom, and it only comes in a standard variant with a TFT display, 2 riding modes, and basic traction control and ABS systems. At this price, it will face serious competition from the likes of the soon-to-be launched Triumph Street Triple R, as well as BS6 versions of KTM's 790 Duke and the Ducati Monster 821. That being said, this is now the most affordable big BMW in India, and to some riders, that's all that will matter. The F900 XR meanwhile has been priced at Rs 10.5 lakhs for the standard version and 11.5 lakhs for the Pro variant. With the Pro model, you get the electronic rear shock, bi-directional quick shifter and cruise control. However, the other features we've mentioned earlier are still options that you need to pay extra for. At this price, the 900 XR ventures into the territory of machines like the Kawasaki Versys 1000, which is much faster but also significantly bigger and heavier. To sum up, if you want a fast, comfortable and capable motorcycle, but you don't like the idea of an adventure bike, the F900 XR could be just what you're looking for.
A few weeks ago, we brought you some of the best action from the Autocar drag day, and now this week, it's time to turn up the heat.
If you want a luxury sedan which also has a dollop of performance, you can't go wrong with these two. They're both turbocharged 2-litre engines, they're both rear-wheel drive, and they both look quite sexy. The Jaguar XE versus the new BMW 3 Series. Which one is quicker? Well, you take a look.
Although both these cars have a 2-litre turbo 4, the BMW has the advantage both in terms of horsepower and torque as compared to the Jaguar. So let's see if this advantage on paper translates to an advantage on the blacktop. Off the line, the BMW with its launch control has a clear advantage leaping ahead, but it isn't only the extra 8 horsepower that gives it a clear edge. It is also the fact that the new 3 Series has a far superior 8-speed gearbox as compared to the 8-speed box on the Jaguar. Shifts are quick with minimal lag, and it shows a whopping 1.331 second difference at the end of the quarter mile, with the BMW winning emphatically with a time of 14.399 seconds as compared to the Jaguar's 15.730. That is quite quick for a luxury family car.
Now, Mercedes-Benz and Audi have been rivals for a while now, but there's a new chapter to their rivalry that's opened up recently. Audi's S-line cars versus the 43 AMG line. Now, this of course is the Audi S5, the 4-door coupe, very pretty car, versus this, the MercedesAMG C43 AMG, which is a 2-door coupe. Which coupe is faster though?
Both the Audi and the Mercedes have a 3-litre twin-turbo V6 under the hood, with the C43 having the edge on paper with more horsepower and more torque. But will Audi's phenomenal quattro all-wheel drive give it the edge over the AMG? Let's find out. With all 4 tires digging into the dusty tarmac like a tiger into his prey, these cars got off the line with no drama whatsoever. But with more horsepower and with more torque on tap, the Mercedes-Benz won with a margin of 0.799 seconds with a time of 12.661 seconds as compared to the Audi S5's 13.460. That said, one must admit, these all-wheel drive cars make the sport of going crazy quick down the drag strip just way too easy.
Now, these two cars behind me have a lot of differences. One's a convertible, one's a coupe, one's a straight 6, one's a V6, one's a rear-wheel drive, one's an all-wheel drive. But the one thing they do have in common is forced induction or turbocharging. But there's always been a big debate about what's sexier, a convertible or a coupe. Let's put that debate to rest in terms of what's faster on the drag strip, the BMW Z4 or the MercedesAMG C43.
While these cars might look very pretty driving down slowly on a promenade, they do pack some serious figures. And while the AMG has the edge both in terms of horsepower and torque, will the all-wheel drive setup weigh it down, or will it have the edge? This one should be close. While the all-wheel drive does give the C43 coupe a ton of grip on this dusty runway, the Z4 too had a trick up its sleeve: launch control. And the evenly matched cars made this one of the tightest and closest races of the drag day. A difference of just 0.035 seconds between the two, with the BMW taking victory at 12.639 seconds versus the C43 coupe's 12.674, literally a whisker between the two. So what gave the BMW the edge? Most certainly the quicker gearbox between the two, that launch control that we spoke about earlier, and a lower curb weight. But boy, did both of these look pretty doing what they did. While stock or manufacturer spec cars can be fast, tuned cars can be even faster. In the weeks to come, we will bring you some of the best modified cars in the country going up against some quick box standard cars to answer the age-old question, stock versus tuned, which one is best? And now it's time for tips on sustainability and protecting the environment with Servo Futura G Plus from Indian Oil. Choose a smaller car if you don't need the size and space. Overloading the car with weight makes it work harder.